Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the weekly, long-running, interactive Rates and Lanes podcast with Rico Muhammad and Chuck Snow. I'm Chuck Snow. I don't know about my co-host, Rico, whether he's joining us tonight or not, because he's kind of a busy guy these days, thankfully. But I do have Mike Paolozzi trucking it old school with me, and we're going to be hitting a lot of subjects just in the green room, chatting with Mike, and we kind of know where we want to go tonight. And one of the things that's bothering both of us, I think, is some of the carnage out there involving trucks. So with no further ado, welcome to the show, Mike. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me again, Chuck. You know I always enjoy doing the show.
Well, I always enjoy having you, and too bad Rico wasn't here. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. I was talking to a fellow last night who came by to help me with something, and he runs he's teaching a towing course at one of the community colleges, because now tow truck drivers have to be certified with some upcoming legislation. But he was telling me they are just busier than hell on their big trucks doing repos plus wrecks.
Yeah.
And, you know, the repo business and towing repos is quite healthy these days, unfortunately, which is not a good sign for our industry. But we all knew this was coming. And then you and I in the green room just happened to get on the topic of safety. And, you know, we're hearing about this carnage everywhere involving big trucks. And I still do maintain that 75% of the wrecks involving big trucks have to do with four-wheelers that get in our way and don't know how to drive. But do we have a lot of people driving 18-wheelers that have learned how to pass the test but don't really know how to drive, and certainly don't know how to do a proper pre-check.
The pre-trip, it's so important, because especially when you go through a scale, and I've posted pictures on my social media of a service brake chamber with the front rotted right off of it. It didn't happen the night before. It didn't happen when my shift started. And I caught it on the pre-trip. And I caught an axle one time. Both main springs were snapped off on one axle. And the layer of rust where that brake was showed you it had been like that for months. It wasn't something new.
Well, then nobody had done a pre-trip on that truck.
No, and I'll tell you, a lot of these drivers were Driver Inc. I think we can say that on this broadcast.
Please do. You know, I have to tell you, back when I was still at Traffics, we held a hour and a half or 2 hour show one night on Driver Inc. And we had a labor lawyer on, and there was this wonderful writer for the Star of all places. I can't pronounce her last name because it had 800 syllables. Her name was Sarah, and she wrote the most scathing article on Driver Inc. And she hit every point that there was to hit. And we had a great conversation, and we had a lot of feedback from our audience that night, because, you know, this Driver Inc. thing isn't helping things either.
No, and one of the situations I had with a driver, this was back in, I would say, May of last year, was just before the Blitz, when they were going to be looking for brake protection valves.
Right.
And I was making sure all the drivers knew how to test it. And I stopped this one driver. I asked him if he checked it. He said yes. I said, how did you check it? Oh, I don't know. I said, are you checking your trailer brakes the way I told you to check them? Yes. I said, how did you check them? He says, I don't know. So I told him, I took him under the trailer. I said, I showed him the push rods or the brake strokes. And I said, you see, these are out. You know the spring brakes are working. I said, go to your truck now, push in the trailer brakes, and come back here. He comes back. He's under the trailer, and the truck and trailer start rolling away. I found out that there was a big practice with a lot of these drivers, all from the same organization. To save time, they would pin to the trailer, get out, hook up the airlines, hook up the lights. up with the dolly legs, and then they didn't have to release the tractor brakes. They only have to push in the red button to get going. So I started watching, and a lot of these drivers were no longer setting the tractor brakes when they were pinning to a trailer. It would save them time. And when this trailer started rolling away and it was loaded, luckily we were behind the axle. I was able to get out. Now I'm trying to chase this truck down, and the driver, he's much slower than I am. He's trying to get up there. He gets to the door of the truck. He's trying to get in to hit the brakes, and I think this truck's going to go over on him. My only opportunity was get the red airline off. That was it. And I went for the step on the catwalk, missed it the first time. I couldn't keep my balance. And I knew the risk I was taking, but I knew I just calmed down, got my pace, got onto the step, and got the red airline off before that thing got within about 5 feet of crashing into another truck.
That was fast thinking, man, because most people would not have thought to do that.
No, but like that's all. That's the old school.
Yep.
That if anything happens, pull off the red airline.
Yeah.
And if the trailer brakes are set right and the spring brakes are working, it's going to stop.
And if they're not, well, it ain't going to. It's not going to.
That's right. But I knew the company, and I knew their maintenance on trailers, and I knew those brakes were going to work. But the fact that I found out this group of drivers, their pre-trip was no longer setting the tractor brakes, really scared me. And
I've never heard of like I have heard and I've seen it, and I was guilty of it when I was 21 years old, and I didn't know about a pre-trip, to be honest. Nobody ever taught me, but I learned, and I passed that knowledge on to people that I've mentored through the years. And, when I did a road test, first thing I would say on the way out, and it was mostly owner operators, it was not company drivers. You had to have a minimum 3 years clean experience, minimum. And I would say to everybody on the way out, do you know how to check brakes? If you don't, we'll show you, but just be honest. And I hate to say it, about 95% said no.
Yeah.
And you know what? I said, okay, you know what? Thank you for being honest. I'm not going to waste my time. Let's see how you drive. And, and some of them were great drivers, but nobody had shown them. So we ran a show for them into the shop with a mechanic, and they learned. And I said to every one of them, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you how this works. If you go and you sign off that you check the brakes and you didn't, and up the road there's a crash and somebody is killed, and you said you checked the brakes and they find out you didn't, my insurance, and I have great insurance, cannot cover you for murder.
No.
You're going to jail in the US, and your lawyer is going to cost you $1 million minimum, because that's what it costs to defend a murder rap.
Yep.
And you know what? I put an end to it. Guys I would watch out my window, and lo and behold, they were all doing pre-trips.
Well, a lot of I do a lot of stuff, a lot on LinkedIn now, a lot of truck safety on LinkedIn, still doing some on Instagram. And I see so many of these videos that say, who's at fault? And it's quite clear the truck driver was not at fault. And I always put in my explanation, the drivers might not be at fault, but it does not mean they're not liable.
That's right. Exactly.
And that's what people don't understand. The fault of the accident is the 5 seconds before the accident. Yep. Liability is the 2 years before the accident. And all they have to do is find you were negligent, talk to a jury that's sympathetic to the victim's family, and you're going to lose.
Oh, yeah. We've all heard the horror stories, and some, this last one, which we're all still talking, everybody had to pay part of it, this Werner thing. There's a typical example of the I don't want to swear on the show, of the nonsense that we have to put up with.
Yeah. Now, back in 97, I had an accident happen. I think I told you before, an accident happened in front of me in Sarah, Pennsylvania. And I wasn't involved in the accident. I was waiting to make a right-hand turn, and I was well back at the intersection. And when the accident happened, I got out to see if people needed help. And that's the last time I'll ever get out of a truck to see if people need help, because it was an off-duty New York State trooper who was involved in the accident.
Right.
And he got the description of the truck, got the description of me. And 2 years later, I was subpoenaed to show up in Pennsylvania court being sued for $1.5 million because I was reckless, disrespectful, dangerous, careless. They just listed the whole thing. And that's how I learned how the trucking lottery works for lawyers, that they're going to throw all this out there and then they're going to bring me down. But in this case, because back in 93, my brother, who was a police officer, was shot and killed on duty by another cop at a training session, I learned how the legal system works and what a line-by-line audit is all about. And I changed my ways of trucking back in 94. Like, I was still good, but I was really good at that point to make sure everything was covered. Because when they brought me in for that deposition hearing, they had my tachograph cards, my log sheets. I was an owner operator. They had my maintenance reports. They had everything. And they couldn't find anything to proceed with.
You know,
Everything was 100%. And it ended up being insurance fraud. And unfortunately, the state trooper, whose son was severely autistic, who needed special training every day, the father lost his job. Because he thought Canadian truck driver, owner operator, oh yeah, they'll settle quick.
Yep.
Not the company I was hauling for at the time. And he lost big time, and his whole
Good
family
time.
paid for it.
You know what? I'm glad to see that there was justice, because a lot of times there is not.
That's
But
right.
I will add to that. Your people think, well, you know, I can fudge this, I can fudge that. You can't fudge anything. Everything is. I can't stress this enough to our listeners. We are totally transparent. If you're running a truck and things are tight, drive slower, but don't skimp on maintenance. If your maintenance policy is to get under that truck, because everybody has to have a policy, maintenance policy. If your maintenance policy is to get under that truck every 30 days, you better damn well get under that truck 30 days. And sign off on it, because all this comes to bite you in the rear end. It's just like, you know, years ago we all ran paper logs. You know, they used to say your logbook is your best friend or your worst enemy. Your choice.
Yep. And now you look at all the toll roads; they're all electronic.
Yes.
So, and that's a timestamp at each end.
That's right.
And if you travel 100 miles and you did it in, say, 80 minutes, they're going to be saying, how did you go 100 miles in 80 minutes when the most you should have gone was 80 miles?
That
exactly. And these are all the things that drivers don't even think about with the toll road. Everything being electronic now, it's a timestamp on your future.
Oh my God.
And no matter how much, we don't worry about that. Oh, they won't be able to find that. I'm there.
Who's they?
A good lawyer. That's what they're getting paid to find.
Yeah, that's what they do. You know what I mean? It's like a Labrador retriever chasing ducks. It's the same thing. They are trained. They do nothing else but investigate, truck crashes. And what they do when they investigate the driver, they know to look in certain places. Because I've been through audits, lots of them in my life, both U.S. and Canadian. I've also withstood during my sale agreement. They wanted to see our safety rating, the people that bought my shares. And they, not only that, they hired one of the biggest law firms in the United States. I think it's Scopelitis, that specializes in this. And I was really impressed with how deep they went into our company's roots from a safety aspect. And you know what? Clean as a whistle, because I insisted there be nothing else but clean as a whistle for years.
Yeah, we come from an era of character, standards, and integrity.
Yeah.
And that's what professionalism is all about. But a lot of that's gone away from entitlement and low budget schools that make the driver think they were properly trained, and they go out of there thinking they know everything, yet they weren't trained anything.
They were trained how to pass their test.
Yeah.
That was it. And that's why these young kids are getting killed, and they're kids. They're 21, 23 years old, are dying in Northern Ontario. They send them out with no experience. They've never been in real snow. And, they're running Highway 11 in the middle of a snowstorm. There's no shoulder way up there, and they're crashing.
Yeah.
And this nonsense has to stop.
Well, I don't understand the whole thing where it's documented. Like you see the TV shows, they're in there with the hidden cameras. They're showing the negligence and what's being done about it. Like the one show where they talked about the test centers are giving out licenses based on quotas, not merit.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what is that saying about the drivers on the roads? And they say it's just not young drivers. It could be somebody who's 45 years old who heard, oh, you can make $130,000 a year as a truck driver. So they go out, take the cheapest course, barely get their license, find a low budget company to get on with, and then they go out and crash into a bunch of cars.
Mike, nobody else is going to hire them but a low budget company, because the good carriers out there, they want experience. They're willing to pay for good experience, but they're not going to hire somebody that just got their license last week. It's just not what they're going to do.
No, and like I have drivers come up to me, do you do payroll or corporate? I said payroll. Well, you should do and they try to go on the whole corporate thing, and I just leave. I says I'm not going to get involved, and neither is my company. So
I totally agree. I remember this discussion I had. I ran an ad, and this was during the pandemic, and we had done this once before. Paid drivers $1 a mile. Drivers driving our trucks, $1 a mile, and I was having a hard time at $1 a mile hiring legitimate drivers that would drive for us, driving our trucks, because I wasn't using, I wouldn't hire them through a payroll service, through Driver Inc. And I'll never forget, one guy said to me, I'm better off to work for 60 cents a mile through a drive with my own company than I am $1, because if I work for you, I have to pay tax. And if I do Driver Inc., I don't have to pay any income tax. Now that's false. You're supposed to. Yeah. And unfortunately, our government, for whatever reason, and I know anybody else, if you owe these guys 5 cents, they will come and grab your kid or your car or anything else. They let truck drivers get away with it.
Yep.
Because they're afraid. There are some militant groups in the trucking industry, and they are afraid of backlash.
Yeah.
It's not going to be popular. And I don't want to get on a rampage about this particular government, but that's been a whole problem with them, is they're trying to win a popularity contest. And it's not. It's called governance.
It's the whole thing about the driver shortage. They're convinced they got to keep the freight moving. There's plenty of drivers right now to keep the freight moving. If there was a true driver shortage, the supply and demand rule means highest rates. Not we're gonna nitpick you down to $1 a mile just to give you something going home, and it's your own truck. So the whole supply and demand thing, the math isn't adding up there, and they want to keep competition. And that's I remember back when they deregulated the industry, that there was one company based out of Milton, and it was like the next day they cut their rates. They were charging half the price, and they're running these old Fords down the road that weren't meant to be on the road, but they cut the rates by half, and everybody else, well, if we don't drop, we're going to lose.
Well, that's been going on this round too, like nothing we've ever seen. I've heard horror stories all over where somebody has had a long-standing relationship with a shipper, direct relationship, and built a business with that one shipper, which is a very dangerous thing to do, because then you get very comfortable. Yeah. And the reason they've built their business around the the one shippers, they were making money. Obviously, they got enough in the rates. And then one of these big mega carriers comes in and cuts the rate by 30, 40, 50%. And company goes to the carrier and says, listen, we got a rate, you're going to lose this if you don't cut your rate by 50% or 30% even. And the guy goes, I'm not doing that. And they end up moving on with this other carrier. And quite often they're disappointed, and sometimes they're not. But that's going on right now as we're speaking all over the place.
Well, that was the sad thing when everything was family owned.
Yeah.
Those were the best days of trucking because the ownership drove, the dispatchers drove, and if you were stuck in a situation, you didn't know who was going to show up. A dispatcher was going to hop in a truck, or the owner was going to hop in a truck and come out and help you. Now you have these large corporations that are cutting safety and maintenance because they have to issue bonuses, and everyone, okay, well, I got a cheaper rate that's going to work, but these trucks aren't being properly maintained. The drivers aren't as well trained. They're willing to take more chances with your freight. And then you say, oh, I'm saving 50%, but my load's laying on its side right now at Burl Oak Drive along the QEW because somebody pulled in front of the truck and the driver tried going across 5 lanes to avoid them. So the discount trucking, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, but none of it and I know what's going on, but none of it makes any sense to me because number one, your safety, first of all, safety is your undercarriage. You got to agree with that. It's your undercarriage.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. It's no different than an airline. Yeah. If an airline starts crashing planes, people die and that's it. They're out of business tomorrow. This is no different. And everybody's looking at your safety rating, your customers, large customers look at safety ratings. Good brokers look at safety ratings. Banks look at safety ratings. Insurance companies look at safety ratings. So how can you be negligent on safety when everybody is looking at how safe an operator you are? That's how you stay in business. And even if you're running trucks for $1.50 a mile, that's what you're charging the customer, and it's costing you $2, you're losing 50 cents a mile. Go and park them.
Yeah. Like I look at the rates right now drivers are getting, and I was getting $1.30 a mile when I sold my truck in 2004, and I was capped at 38 cents a liter. And I'm hearing drivers are going at $1.50 a mile right now, and my truck payment was $1,800. And I'm hearing drivers now are paying $3,500 to $4,300 a month for a truck.
Can't
Plus
do it.
the price. Like, how are they doing that? And they're only getting 20 cents a mile more. I don't know how that's working.
Well, they're not. And we had a rule. The most I would even if a payment, and this is I've been out of there for over 3 years, but the most we would allow an owner operator to have as a payment maximum was $3,000. And if it was any more, we would not hire them. And the guys were getting mad, they would come in, that would call. And they'd say, well, what difference does it make? Well, the problem is that when you're losing that $1,500 a month, which is $18,000 a year, you're not going to be happy here. You're going to lose your truck. Nobody's ever lost a truck working at traffics. We don't want you to start, we don't want to start now. Where is that $18,000 going to come from?
Yeah, and what are you going to cut back on yourself to feed your family?
Exactly. And I would agree with that. And that's
where's the first thing? Maintenance.
Yeah. What is your wife going to go to the food bank while you're trying to make $3,000 a month payments? And just before I left, and even after I left, I had some conversations with potential owner operators because I still work with the safety department at Traffics for a long time. Did some of the road tests and it helped interview some of the guys during the transition. And people would come in and they would be insistent, and some of them had like $4,500 a month payments, craziness. And they would pay $250,000, $240,000 for a Freightliner Cascadia. or
Yeah.
whatever that high-end Freightliner was. And I remember saying to some of them, just go give the truck back, man. You know what? You're going to lose. How much did you give us a down payment? They go, 30 grand. I go, well, you know what? It's going to hurt. Lose the 30 grand because you're going to lose a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. I was out with a driver. We were training him on food grade liquid.
Right.
And he was telling me he wants to buy the biggest truck he can get. He's going to live in it for 5 years. Now, he's single. He's in his late 40s. And at our facility, there's a driver's lounge, showers, there's 2 TVs, full kitchen. So he was saying, when I'm on the road, I can live in the truck. When I get back to the yard, I can sleep in the truck, live in the lounge. And I thought, okay, so you're not going to have an apartment or anything for 5 years? He says, no, I'm going to do this full gypsy mode. He's going to be in that truck and he's going to live in that truck for 5 years. And I said, what if the truck has to go in for an in-frame or something? You might be down for 2 weeks. He says, well, then I hotel it. He says, but if I'm not paying rent, I don't have a big car payment, I don't have all these other payments, he says, I should be able to do it. And the logic he gave behind it, I thought, knowing this guy, he could probably do it. Because he's really worked the numbers out both ways. It's just not a fantasy. He worked it both ways. And it didn't sound bad, but he had to be able to live in that truck for 5 years.
You know, we had an Eastern European owner-operator, and he was good. He had an older truck. It was a 2000 International, and he ran one trip a week from Toronto area to Minnesota and back. So he did just over 2,000 miles a week, like clockwork. He would deliver every Sunday night at around 8 o'clock. You could set your watch where his first delivery was, around Rochester, Minnesota. And he would get back Thursday night. He would go to a hotel because he didn't have an apartment or a house, didn't have a wife. And he would stay in a hotel Thursday night and Friday night. And then he would leave Saturday at lunchtime. And it worked for him. But those are far and few between. I think most of us want a heck of a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not it worked for some people.
Yeah, like I say, if you're dedicated to it. But like I said, he had no kids, didn't have a wife, he had no commitments.
Yep.
He said if this is something he wanted to do. And I thought, well, if you're going to try it, this is the time to do it. So
tell our listeners what you're doing now, because you used to be a driver trainer at one point. I think when you first came on our show, probably a year or so ago. What are you doing now? What sort of work?
Now I'm a senior driver mentor at Tandit Logistics.
Right.
And I went from, I started there as a senior driver mentor. That's still my title. But we've taken on a contract with Linde, which is a bulk atmospheric compressed gas company.
Yeah.
And I'm steadily focused now on all the cryogenic training. So
tell our listeners what cryogenics are.
Okay, so cryogenics, it's made up of the atmosphere. It's what you're breathing in. But what the manufacturers do is they chill it to such a cold temperature that all the elements of the atmosphere start to separate. And the 3 products we get involved in is argon, liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen. And the main one I'm doing right now is liquid nitrogen, that at its liquid state is minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit. It boils at minus 300 Fahrenheit, and its expansion rate is 700 times. So for every cubic foot of liquid nitrogen, that will expand 700 times if it gets anything warmer than minus 300. So the training process of how to load these trailers, how to unload the trailers, how to transport it, that's what I'm focusing on mainly now. I do the orientations for the product. So I don't do the orientation for Tandit. I do a Linde orientation going through all the policies. And being that I've been in the trucking industry for 41 years, my orientation is being able to relate something, every policy, to the driver so that they feel they understand it, Not that I'm new here. I don't know what they're talking about. I do it in a way that I would want to hear it for the first time.
Right.
And I make up my own videos that I do with the orientation, just to be able to show the drivers what they're going to be getting into. With the drivers that are doing CO2, there's 3 valves on the trailer. With cryogenics, there's 14 gate valves that you use between loading and unloading. And this is what I'm doing now. And it's the happiest I've been in trucking in years, because it's a great product. You're like a little scientist when you're training on it. Then all of a sudden one day it just all clicks, and you're learning how to control tank pressure, trailer pressure, pressure builder, because you have the coil under the trailer that you're letting product seep into. So as it expands 700 times, it keeps the trailer pressurized while you're pulling product out of it. And
now, are you moving the gas out of the trailer from a power takeoff that's on the tractor? Or how does
yes,
that work? Okay.
yes, and then there's a cryogenic pump that can handle those temperatures in the back of the pump compartment on the trailer. But you're pumping the liquid, and it's only one hose. There's no return hose. There's nothing mechanically pressurizing the tank. So as the product's coming out and you're pumping into the customer's tank, you're using your own product to keep the trailer pressurized. Because, like say, you have that coil under the trailer,
Right.
and minus 320 goes into that coil. By the time it travels 5 inches, it's expanded 700 times back into its natural gas state. And that's what's keeping the trailer pressurized while we're unloading it.
Now, I imagine, now I've never pulled anything like that in my life. I imagine it's fairly stable, is it not?
It doesn't, it's not like a liquid, like a food grade that really sloshes back
Right.
and forth. It does have baffles in it.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah, you figure minus 320. It's like when we dump the hose, when we're done, if there's any product, it hits the ground, and by the time the fog's gone away, there's nothing there to show anything came out of that hose, because like I say, it boils at minus 300.
Right.
And when it comes out like water. But when it's in the trailer, I ride with the drivers, I don't feel any slosh whatsoever.
Okay.
And
Now,
the trailers are filled up to 95% capacity.
and what does a load weigh, roughly?
I tried them load. I know US we can load up to 107,000.
Wow.
And we're putting about 20. When we put it in the trailer, it's based on cubic meters. So
Right.
to make a load of liquid nitrogen takes 26,000 cubic meters of atmosphere to make enough liquid nitrogen for that one trailer. So when it's going down the road, it's based on how many cubic meters you put in.
Right.
So with the quad, we're running at 58,000 kilograms. So I think that's what, about 123,000.
Wow. Okay. You guys are heavy.
Yeah. But with the Tritums, we're usually up around like Tritums, because we load out of the US as well as Canada.
And where do you, okay, so when you're picking up the product in the US, what part of the US are you picking up in?
Niagara Falls, New York.
Oh, that's all. Okay.
We're
So
10
that's
minutes
where
across the border.
okay,
That's
so
it.
that's where you're allowed the heavy weights.
Yeah.
New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, I think, and then out west. And then you bring it back over the border this way.
Yep. And it's a top-up service. There's no schedule. There's no delivery time. You get the trailer loaded, and then you log into the system, and it'll show you where you're doing your deliveries. And all you're doing is topping up tanks as you go along.
So do you go to the customers in Niagara Falls, there's trailers dropped and they load them while, like, do they drop load them? Is that how this
No,
works?
we stay hooked. It's a self-loading facility. All the plants that we go to are self-loading.
Right.
And it's a one hose hookup, and it's like the whole part is making sure the drivers, because this is also a medical grade product, so it's how the sampling's done, making sure this load is as pure as it can possibly be, how not to contaminate the load, and that's all the loading process. And I've been asked at the border, because sometimes I'll be going over in a pickup meeting the driver there, And they'll ask me, you're training drivers. Shouldn't that be an American job at an American facility? And once I say it's a self-loading facility, they say, okay, don't worry about it.
Right.
And then I go on. But I've only been asked 4 times in 5 months about why am I going over there to train the drivers. But we also load in Scarborough. And the thing about the bulk atmospheric gases, you've got like Lindy, you've got Air Products, Air Liquide, you got Messer, you got all these. They all work together. So if one plant has to shut down for maintenance, their drivers go directly to the competition to load. And the drivers all help each other. And I've been in Niagara Falls where there's Air Products, where there's Air Liquide, there's Lindy, three different companies in the loading rack. And we're all helping each other out because these drivers may never have loaded there before. And their fittings for the sampling may not be compatible with the hose that hooks up. So we get them the fittings. When we go to one of their plants to load, they show us where the fittings are. They help us log in. And that's what's making the job great, is that it's old school trucking again. Everybody's working together. Everybody helps each other out.
Like it used to be back in the old days. Yep.
Yeah. That's what it's like. We're all back in the old days again.
Yeah. It's kind of nice. Now, Tandit is kind of they're kind of a unicorn, if I'm not mistaken. They are a true contract carrier, are they not? They're kind of like Canada Cartage. They just work on contract. There's no open board or anything like that there, is there?
There is some open board.
Oh, there is. Okay.
On some of the products, but most of the drivers are locked into a specific product. There are some drivers that are very well versed in many products, and they
would fill in. They would just fill in if, let's just say somebody didn't show up for the for the Lindy run. They would be able to do that, but they may be able to slide them in on a flatbed because they know how to do that.
Yeah.
But they don't do open board customer sort of thing.
No.
They don't do. But everybody else pretty much, you're talking about these other companies, for the most part, they run their own equipment, do they not?
That's right.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's odd when you're talking to somebody who you don't even work with, you don't work for, you're 2 totally different companies. And you're standing there loading at the same time and helping each other out. And with this product, there's no room for error. Because especially with your PPE, if you get hit with liquid nitrogen, whatever part of your skin got hit is going to freeze solid.
So it's like propane.
Yeah. But like propane, I think, is minus 40. This is minus 320. So
burn your hands off of it,
Yeah. And now there were times like you get a hole in your glove and you don't realize that hole is there until you grab that metal hose. And that metal hose hits that bare skin in your glove. And then you find out really quick your glove's got a hole in it.
So does Tandit have a constant program where they're constantly changing your PPE?
I have access to the utility room, and I also keep stuff in my pickup. And if I'm not there, my pickup is, and I can unlock my pickup from my phone.
Okay.
So if somebody calls me and says, hey, I need a pair of gloves, I just say, let me know when you're standing next to my pickup. But the different facilities, you're basically wearing the big leather welding gloves.
Yeah, of course.
So that your wrists are protected and that. And like your face shield, hard hat, hearing protection, because those cryo pumps are just screaming the whole time. Yeah. And you just got to make sure there's no bare skin. And I have to watch the drivers, and we're being watched by the customer. And a lot of times it could be a once and done. You forget to put your wheel chocks out, that could be it. You're off the contract. You forget to put your pylons out, you could be off the contract. It all depends who catches you. And Tandit is 100% safety oriented. It's a family company.
Yeah, I know that they are the Chili's. Nice people.
Which is the reason I went to work for them, because they're family owned.
Yeah.
And they have a policy now that if there's, in the ELD, if you put something in that has to be fixed on a truck or a trailer, that unit does not move until it's been fixed. Lindy has the same policies. Anything wrong with the trailer, that we're pulling their trailers, anything wrong with that trailer, you call the logistics. They're going to put into your tour miscellaneous, and you're going right to a facility that's authorized to work on those trailers. And that trailer isn't leaving until it's fixed. And it's like heaven for somebody like you and me who's so safety oriented to know there's never a reason any driver would have to go down the road with something that wasn't safe. And there's no manipulation. There's nothing like that. It's if it's not right to go, it stays parked. When it's ready to go, then you go. And that's just how it is there. And everybody's paid hourly. So it's not like you're losing time. From the time you log in to the time you log out, you're on the clock.
But there's no long distance with any of this stuff, is there?
With some of our hot products, they're going down to like Pittsburgh. They're going out to Indiana, Chicago.
Okay.
A lot of Michigan, and everyone's getting paid by the hour.
And they always come back empty, I would presume.
Sometimes you might take a load out to Michigan. So with the hot oil products,
right,
coming from the steel mills, it'll come to Canada to be turned into maybe a driveway sealer or something like that. Then when it's processed, it's loaded into a tank. It might be sent to Michigan. Then from Michigan, they're going to go to Pittsburgh to bring a load back.
Okay.
So, but the product always stays in the hot trailers. The product always stays the same.
Right.
And the Lindy trailers, the product always stays the same. The only one is like the stainless ones for food grade.
Right.
Where the products are constantly changing.
Yeah, and they wash them out, and
yep.
And I've had a little bit of exposure, not for our own fleet, but through, brokering loads to other fleets of food grade products and soaps and stuff like that. I know how difficult it is to find a wash facility to wash trailers. I remember doing a deal once in Iowa, and we had loads going to Iowa. We had loads coming back, but the driver, and this goes back a while, years ago, the driver would have to deliver in Iowa somewhere, it was west of Des Moines, and he'd have to go all the way back to Chicago to find a place to wash that trailer out.
Yeah, our drivers don't run into that because, like I say, all the food grade stuff, it usually comes back to the Toronto, Mississauga area.
Right.
And then gets dropped off in Oakville at a big wash facility there.
There's not too many of those wash facilities anywhere.
Yeah, this is a big facility. It used to be where the Praxair plant was.
Oh, yeah.
In Oakville. And I'm trying to think who owns that one now, but you have Laidlaw, you have Tandit, you have all the carriers, the bulk carriers bringing their trailers in there. They do chemical wash. Well, you can do chemical wash down on South Down Road at National. So we have two big wash.
If I'm not mistaken, doesn't Trimac offer a wash?
Yeah, that's now, I think it's National.
Okay.
Is the name of it. That's South Down Road. They do chemical wash.
Right.
And then we got this other one on Spears Road in Oakville that does all the other tank wash. So all our facilities in Ontario, except for Sarnia, which is basically CO2. So those trailers aren't ever getting washed. Our drivers are going out, delivering a product and coming back with a compatible product. So they don't have to find that wash facility along the way.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Ladies and gentlemen, just do us a favor. If you're watching this show, you're enjoying it, could you press like? We're trying to get our algorithms up. Really appreciate it if you would. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to
that's okay.
Public service announcement. Yeah, it's fascinating. And I would imagine you're delivering the nitrogen is going to hospitals, most of it.
The nitrogen itself, a lot of automotive manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
Well, and it's funny because we were up in Elmira last week a couple times,
right,
to the Mennonite farms, and you pull in with this nitrogen tanker, and you're thinking, I see a bunch of horses and carriages here. Why am I here? And then you find out that somebody's rented one of the barns, and there's a big laser cutter in that barn, and they're using the nitrogen for cooling the laser heads.
Oh yeah, those guys are. People don't realize that, how advanced they are. They have their religious beliefs, but they're amazing people.
Yeah. With the nitrogen, it's not too much hospitals. If they do, it's usually for the morgue. So for flash freezing and keeping things cold.
Oh,
a lot of food grade processing, where like with fruits and stuff, where they're putting multiple things in packaging, they freeze it before it goes in, so it's not just a big rock of product. and like I say, not just for lasers, but other places where they fit parts together.
Right.
We'll be delivering to a nitrogen tank, and there's a hydrogen tank there, and they're using that to heat one part while they're using the nitrogen to cool another part, and then they put the parts together. And when they come back to their natural temperature, those parts are never coming apart.
I remember like years ago when I was a kid, and I used to deliver to hospitals, and they always had big gas tanks there. You know,
That's usually oxygen.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah, oxygen. They do have some nitrogen, but mostly oxygen tanks.
So do you guys do that as well, correct?
We're trained for it.
Right.
Now, when I got my certification, I was delivering to the hospital in Welland, and there you have the smaller hospitals have small tanks.
Right.
And it's tricky because they also have a utility tank that's their backup for emergencies. And sometimes you're filling them both at the same time. And the only way you know a tank is full, you can't trust the gauges. It has a tricock coming out the tank, and once it's just gas coming out that tricock, but it's set at 95% inside the tank. Once the liquid hits that tricock and starts coming out in a liquid state, it's like a snowstorm. And when you got your main tank and your utility tank, and they're kind of starting to come to the end at the same time, and you got to get one closed and the other, it's quite tricky. And that's what they waited to certify me on, to see if I could handle the hospital. And those tanks, they could be anywhere from 30-pound pressure to 300-pound pressure. And the process when you're loading with cryogenics, you have a bottom fill and a top fill in the tank.
Right.
You go with the bottom fill. As the product takes away the airspace, it compresses the space, and right away, compressed air gets warm.
Right.
And the pressure will build up in the tank. So then we can redirect to a top fill that brings the product through the top, through that compressed area. And it's like taking a shower. You get hot water coming on, it's going to cool you down. Right. So we'll run the product through the atmosphere part of the tank, and you see the pressure drop. And it's finding that sweet spot where you can unload and maintain a pressure without having to make any adjustments. And that's why it's a 6 to 12 week training process per driver, to make sure they're very well versed, and almost all scenarios are played out during their training. And even if I get a driver who's got some experience, still 6 weeks to make sure that they didn't pick up any bad habits. And it's great hanging out with these guys for 6 weeks. You get to know them. You're becoming a small family. And it's something I would recommend to people if they want to make good money and you want to do 4 on, 4 off, do 12-hour shifts. You're only working half the year, and you know your schedule. From your first trip out, you know your schedule for the year.
That's pretty unusual in the trucking industry. Now, I've got a question. There are a lot of steps to delivering a load of gas or picking up a load of gas. You just scratch the surface, I'm sure. Do the guys have a list they look at and they go, okay, need to put my cones out, need to chalk? Do they work off a list, or are they trying to work off of memory?
We work them off memory. So when we arrive at a site, I will always be there before the truck gets there, unless I'm running with the driver.
Right.
And even through the orientation part of this, when I explain to them, you have to realize, I tell them, even if you stop at Tim Hortons on an en route, put your wheel chocks out. Why not? I said, if this product, like liquid nitrogen, if that trailer was to roll for some reason and break open, anybody near it's going to suffocate because there's no oxygen in it. It's 99.999% pure. And you've got that trailer that's going to produce 25,000 cubic meters of non-oxygen gas that you're going to be trapped in. And you put your wheel chocks out, put a pylon beside it, so when you get in the truck and you look in your mirror, the wheel chocks are still there. And we talk about this, and then we think about different scenarios. And then when I get out with the drivers, the first thing that's in their mind is, got to get the wheel chocks and cones out. It's just the first thing in their mind. I have yet to have to remind anybody to do that. And the whole backup process, you have to get out, and I remind them there's cameras all around now. So when they decide to pull up a certain time frame, they can look to see if you did your walk around before you backed up. And we have to get out. We have to place the 2 cones stacked. So the one's up, the other one's on an angle. and that's your target for backing up. And that's how you know when to stop. And all this is so drilled into these drivers. And of course, all of them have to have 3 years experience and a clean record, like 3 years tanker experience to be hired on. But I'll tell you right now, we're paying $40 an hour.
Whoa. Okay.
And we can't find drivers. So I thought this is a good opportunity to say if someone's looking for full-time work, 4 on, 4 off, and right now we got guys doing days, we got guys getting trained for nights, and as we get more trucks, we're going to be looking for more drivers. And I'll tell you, I almost want to get back into it, but I'm at the point now I'm enjoying training and schooling more than I do driving. So
Now, are your trucks all, I'm curious, are they all automatic?
Yes.
Okay, they've gone that route.
But it could be a Freightliner, it could be a Mack, it could be a Volvo, it could be a Kenworth.
Right.
We have all different makes there, but these trucks have to have a wet pack on them, so they're all dedicated to the fleet.
Right.
And they're all new trucks. So as they put a truck on with the CO2 side or the cryogenic side, it's a brand new truck when it goes into service for that customer.
Wow.
And the trailers we're using, they're only a year or 2 old. I know they have cryogenic trailers can go 30, 40 years. They can keep
tankers seem to be able to last a long time as compared to van trailers and reefers and flatbeds.
Yeah. And I see some of the tanks that we deliver to, and I always look at the manufacture date just as a curiosity thing. And I saw one recently that said 1975. At a
Whoa.
So that tank's almost 50 years old and still going strong.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So tank is 50 years old. It has to be pulled out of service every so often.
This is the customer's tank, the receiving tank.
Okay, but even there. Oh, I see. Okay, but even there. Oh, I see. But it still has to be checked, doesn't it?
That part I don't know about because that's all Lindy based, right. Or whoever owns a tank we're delivering to. They're doing all this kind of stuff. So I'm just basically involved in the loading and unloading process. I don't see anything beyond that with that contract.
You were mentioning something delivering to hospitals about the gauges. Are the gauges where you deliver some of these hospitals, are the gauges on their tanks not calibrated sometimes?
They are calibrated, but anything like that's mechanical can fail at some point. Because all these gauges, everything's working off an internal temperature of minus 320. And if an O-ring or a seal or something goes, sure, and it can seep back. Now, the gauges themselves, the pressure gauges, they're filled with glycerin.
Right.
So that doesn't freeze. The Barton gauges that actually give us a rough idea of the level in the tank. Those there, you could deliver on a day like today where it was really hot. Right. And it might say on this one, it might say the tank fills at 700 inches. Well, on this particular day, it might fill at 640 because of the outside temperature. In the wintertime, it might fill at 730. So that's why they have that tricock valve that always has gas coming out till the liquid level hits that 95% mark. And that's our only guarantee. And we also have that valve on the truck. So when we're loading, Niagara Falls and Nanacoke, we load on scales, but Scarborough, you're loading by the gauge. Whoa. So you have the tricock open. So if the gauge is faulty, the tricock on the trailer sets off a little snowstorm underneath, and you know, okay, you got to shut down. You're at 95%.
So there's no sitting inside the cab of that truck.
No.
You've got to be outside watching everything, no matter what the weather.
That is policy. They check on that the whole time. Doesn't matter how hard it's raining, how bad the wind's blowing, how bad the snow is going. If that pump's running, you're standing at the back of the truck.
You've got to be. And yep. What are they doing for cameras as far as the company Tandit you're working for? Inward and outward facing cameras on everything?
On just the regular trucks, it's just outside cameras. On this particular contract, it has to be driver facing camera as well. So
we're getting close, but I need to get your opinion. What is your personal opinion on the inward facing cameras?
You know, at one time I was dead set against it. I thought it was an invasion of privacy. But now that I'm working with the safety department as well, like they're having me in one time when I have get a day where I can go, and I'm going to watch how their whole system works. And those inward facing cameras, they cannot randomly look at that and see what you're doing.
No.
They can't do that. But if you have a hard brake or stability control or anything that sends a signal that says you've gone beyond the parameters of safety, they can see the 20 seconds prior to that signal being sent.
Or if you've had a crash, right?
Yeah.
Right away. If you're involved in a crash. I have, I was kind of like you, I guess, many years ago when I heard about the technology, but I've changed my personal way of thinking, and some of our listeners may be a little disappointed, but I think that camera is your best friend.
It is.
Because if you're doing something wrong, well, damn well, it shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
That's exactly it.
You're a professional.
And I know I talk to drivers from, like, not our company, but from other companies that have the inward facing cameras. If you grab a coffee and just take a sip of coffee, it'll say distracted. The camera will yell at you and tell you distracted driving, distracted. And like with us, if you have a hard braking, that video gets sent to the company right away. And if there's somebody there at the time to review it, they're going to look at it right away, because our drivers are all based on a safety score.
Right.
And you're allowed 2 hard brakings for every 10,000 kilometers. But if it was a justified hard braking, it doesn't go against your safety score. And my pickup, this company keeps everybody honest. My pickup has an Isaac in it. And I have an outward facing camera. And I have to be monitored because, like I say, I'm a mentor, I'm a trainer. I should be held to the same standards as the drivers. And all our pickups that are part of these contracts, the drivers are all being monitored as well. They watch our speed, our braking, our cornering. When you go through construction zones, it reads the speeds for the construction zones, and we got to drop our speed. But we also know that those cameras aren't foolproof yet, because you go by the weigh scale in Oakville and it sees that 40-kilometer one, and you're still on the highway doing 100-kilometer. All of a sudden, it sends a speeding signal, which activates all the cameras for the last 20 seconds, and they can see what was going on. Then they picked up the wrong camera or the wrong sign.
Wow.
But we also have scale bypass in the Isaacs.
Right.
Which that tells new drivers coming in something about the safety record of a company, where you get weigh station in 3 kilometers, and then within 30 seconds, you see bypass come up, and you go right past the scale. And if that doesn't tell you how safe a company is or how good their safety score is, that you get a scale bypass, like that's like having that nice little trophy going around all the time.
Yeah, that's the company you want to work for. Because they're going to be in business tomorrow, which is
that's right. The great people to work for. And like, I get into the office once in a while, and like the whole licensing part of the business, the insurance part of the business, they have people focused all day on just those activities. So we're always compliant. There's no complacency. And the people we have in charge of all those little different units, very well versed in it. And I'll tell you, it's all women. And right there, it's going to go right. Because I love working with women, especially in trucking, because they only know one way to do things. They do it right.
Right. I agree. Mike, I'm watching the time click away, and I want our listeners to know how they get hold of you.
You can get a hold of me. I'm on Instagram at Trucking at Old School. I'm on YouTube at Trucking at Old School, and on LinkedIn at Mike Paolozzi, my name. You can message me on any of those platforms. I'm now doing a lot of YouTube shorts, putting all my old Instagram videos on there now. I'm getting like 1,500 hits on each one I'm posting, so they're getting out there. People are interested in safety, and I'm on 3 platforms now, getting everything out there.
Well, God bless you for you just keep on doing it right, Mike. God bless you for that. You are devoted. You're the consummate professional of our industry. Couldn't ask for anybody better to represent us. And I want to thank you again for joining us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, If you need to get hold of me, just send me an email, chucksnow280@outlook.com. This has been the Rates and Lanes podcast. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be with us. Hopefully, we'll see you next week if the sun shines and the creek don't rise. As Rico says, keep it between the mustard and the mayonnaise. As I say, catch on the flip-flop. We'll see you next week. Good night and God bless. Good night,
Thanks, Chuck.
Mike. Thanks again. Take care.